Welcome to Healing Wisdom, a Thursday morning talk show featuring guests sharing their stories and knowledge. We discuss the healing aspects of the arts, metaphysics, social justice, and adventure through all types of terrain. So join me, Pandora Peoples, here on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. We're streaming worldwide at WOMR.org. Singer-songwriter and performance artist Farnaz Ohadi grew up in Iran. In college, she studied opera, Persian folk singing, and flamenco cante. She has several albums, with one on the way, Breath, slated for release in 2025, and today we're going to give you a sneak peek of this forthcoming album. Today she lives in Sevilla, Spain, and we caught up with her on tour to talk about her new album.
از تن چو برم جان پاک من و تو خشتی دو نهند در مغاک من و تو وانگه برای خشت گور دیگران در کال بودی کشم خاک من و تو.
I'm so impressed by your work, how you blend musical performances with dance. And this stems in part from your background as a flamenco dancer. Your Persian flamenco music incorporates Persian lyricism and the essence of Persian music with the beautiful staccato of Spanish flamenco. It's such good medicine.
I think I find that, obviously not to take away from music that is one genre only, but when you really do think about fusion, it becomes very intentional. It becomes at the point that you really think about maybe not necessarily every note, but every intention, every word, every intonation, where you go with it, what you say becomes very critical, So then the music is very intelligent in some ways. Like you really have to think, so you don't just throw it away. That's what I'm finding, and it wasn't something that I set out to do, and I'm finding it just not easy to just let go of all those details because I'm so intentionally trying to fuse the two, more than anything. That's what it is. Other than that, I feel like also it sort of gives a nod of respect to both cultures in some ways, especially if it's done well, which I would hope that mine is, and so there's a point that there's an understanding that I fully understand and this, as much as I can, this genre, and I fully understand and respect this genre, and then look at what I can do, paying respect to both, but here's a new idea, so that's always been the goal.
Yeah, and one of the things about it, is that it's human nature to define ourselves in opposition to what we think we are not, and to label things, to label people, to label groups. And that divisiveness is kind of at the heart of what is messed up about the greed in our cultures, or the hierarchical structures that go against a more egalitarian model where we respect everyone and everyone is welcome and safe to bring things to the table. So with blending genres, you're elevating both cultures.
Really well said. One of the things I'm always fascinated by is this conversation around immigration. And are you tolerating or are you celebrating? You know, like, am I tolerating the Persian elements in my background or am I actually celebrating them? Am I tolerating what I've been clearly influenced by living in Canada and now in Spain so long, just because I have to and I live in these spaces, or am I celebrating them? And I think part of the fusion is that, okay, well, I'm exposed. I could just sort of just tolerate and try to stay within what I know that is safe, or I celebrate and pick the things that make sense or things that don't, and not be frightened of them and bring them into this new, hopefully one single voice conversation. And that's always been what I feel fusion is really. Like the whole concept of flamenco persa, as they call it in Spain, in Spanish, which is different from what I humbly would call more of a conversation between classical Persian music and flamenco music that has been done so far, is that there's always two groups having a conversation. And sometimes they try to, you know, have one voice, but often they speak over each other, and then you can see they try to sing together and they don't really go past a certain level of depth, because it's just not possible when you're working with two individual groups that are very steadfast in what they do. And I'm, you know, or sometimes, you know, similar, I can say what I consider myself is like, there's this highway of 8 lanes of flamenco music, so super paved, very, like, for years it's been there, people coming and going. And then it's exactly the same with Persian classical music or Persian pop music. Cars are coming and going, and here in between, I'm in the middle, making a little road that no one even needs, and it's a dirt road, and I'm taking my time and opening my lunchbox and having my little, you know, little sandwiches, and I go back to my little shovel, and nobody's behind me, nobody's ahead of me, and it's a road for me, and it makes sense for me because there's just too many cars going by, but I would like it to be one scenic route in the middle, you know? So yeah, that's sort of where it's at, and that's how I look at it. And it did take a long time for it to sort of feel more, to go with the analogy, more travelable of a road when I think back and listen back to what I produced before. And I think this is the first time with this album that I feel like, okay, the stew is finally settled, you know? It's like this French stew that you've made in the morning, and by the next day, it's like, yeah, now this is it. The wine and the sauce, the meat is really fully infused. So that's what it is. And I've been hearing that a lot from people who've been following my progress, that this album is something else. And I'm glad that you took your attention, because I know you hear a lot. I know a lot comes across your desk. So I'm very grateful for your attention. And it is a very, very special project.
The next song is the first track from Breath from Farnaz Ohadi. The track is Anda Halejo, which is a new take on an old flamenco favorite. The lyrics were written by poet Baba Teher Orion, and the rhythm is a buleria, a fast-paced flamenco rhythm.
Anda jaleo, jaleo. چه میخواهی زین حال خرابم چه میخواهی زین حال خرابم تو که با ما سر یاری نداری انیمه شو آیی بخوابم انیمه شو آیی بخوابم انده حله و حله و انده حله و حله و ز دست دیده و دل هر فریاد گرچه دیده بینه دل کنه یا گرچه دیده بینه دل کنه یا بیخورم چرایی یکی باری ز دوشم بر نداری میونه بار سربارم چرایی میونه بار سربارم چرایی هر آن کس عاشق است عاشق است عاشق است از جان نترسد هر آن کس عاشق است از جان نترسد از بنده از زندان نترسد از بنده از زندان نترسد.
I absolutely love this album, Breath, Farnaz. All of the rhythms featured in the songs are just magnificent. It just reminds me how important the beat of the drum is.
The heartbeat and
Right, it is said that the drum is the heartbeat of the mother, that it reminds us of the time we spend gestating in the womb. Those rhythms and syncopations, I really feel like they activate an ancient or collective memory or wisdom, really go back to the heart of what makes a culture tick and all of the love and all of the care and all of the connection, where that music developed from.
Yeah, 100%, I agree with you. It's at the very beginning of this journey, this is now 12 years ago, a lot of the resistance was from within me. Like I was really questioning who I think I am to assume that I could, because as I came from a dancer side of things as well. I came from belly dancing and also flamenco dance. For 20 plus years I danced flamenco. I just always honored flamenco. I heard it as Spanish thing. So I really had to really question my soul and say, okay, who do you think you are that you could? You're like, as simple as that. A question is like, am I really allowed to do this? And then talking to a couple of mentors specifically, and they said, no, like we, as Persians, we have a big claim on where the trajectory of flamenco, where it came from, the Romanis that went through. So, but to kind of bypass those limitations that we put on ourselves, like, am I appropriating? Am I tapping into something more ancient? Like all of that, the journey has been long. It hasn't just been musical. It hasn't just been linguistic. It hasn't just been scientific. It's been a many, many layers to this. And I feel like I'm a better and different person because of it. Like it's been from my own personal growth. It hasn't just been some upset. It has it has a bit of an obsession side to it, I have to admit, but that's one side. But it's also this general, like one of your things I think you had mentioned in your question is that what has it evolved in me. I'm a very different person than I was 12 years ago. The boldness that I feel in assuming that I belong here in this space is very freeing and very emboldening, and I am not a 20-year-old. I'm much older, which is, I feel two things about the fact that, obviously I would not be able to do fusion to this level had I not had the 20 years of Persian culture and then 20 years of flamenco culture, being able to combine the two. So as an older person, that is a blessing. But it's also the fact that giving permission to an older person to sort of start navigating a new path. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to use the wisdom, especially as a woman, that you just sort of, you don't become dismissed. You're not the crone that people like to name. You're in fact the one that embraces and nurtures and brings more wisdom. And if anybody who's able to take anything they can, but you're the one as the older person able to bring this umbrella of wisdom. And so there's been a lot of thinking, a lot of exploration, personal exploration, a lot of walls that I came across that I didn't know I had inside me, a lot of limitations that was set by me, and obviously limitations that were set in Iran growing up, and what the notion of a good Persian woman should be and all that. So it's been quite a journey. It's not just musical. It really isn't. And it needed to be done as a personal, just a single soul here sitting with you. I needed to get it done. Now, if it's connecting with others is an incredible bonus, but truly and honestly, Pandora, I never assumed anyone would be interested in this. I really didn't. I just did it for me. The first album, I took my time. Again, nobody knew that I was doing it. I just did it for me. I cried so much at the studio. It took a year to record, which is unbelievably crazy when I think about it now. Just because there would be days that I'll be just thinking about the lyrics and I couldn't record because I was just so tearful and I was so upset because it brought up so many questions, so many challenges, so many memories, so much trauma. And at the end of it, I felt so healed. And I was like, okay, I got it done. And then I presented it and just I'm like, okay, well, let's have a concert because this is what I did for the last 6 years. And then all of a sudden, people are like, oh, this is what I was thinking. This is what I was like, what, really? Like, I thought it was just me. I thought it was just all my stuff. And then I had to really think about like, okay, there is something here. But it was never meant to be something that I will put out. It was purely a personal exploration and challenging of what I understood as my reality. And then it's completely different now. So
You're listening to Healing Wisdom on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. You can find Healing Wisdom wherever you get your podcasts. If you're just joining us now, we're speaking with singer-songwriter and performance artist Farnaz Ohadi, who grew up in Iran, and we're talking about Breath, her forthcoming album. It sounds like the process of recording this album was a very healing experience.
I don't know if you've ever read the book Like Water for Chocolate. It's a good story. Yeah, like whatever you do, your intentions get infused in that. And those tears are there in the first album. I remember the moments that, I will be remembering things and I'll be like, this is not just for me. This is for that little girl. It was about that, either me or the things I witnessed, the injustices that I saw and I had absolute zero control over changing anything. Like all of those things, all of that came out in that album. And then that feeling was so empowering and so freeing and so comforting that that's what I seek again and again. And I think this album, again, really taps into that by the concept that it is purely about love, but it's not really about physical love, although obviously that is important, but it's also love of self, love of prolonging your legacy, love of your children or whoever is dear to you, love of your parents who gave you your legacy, either good parents or not so good parents. Like all of that, we as humans, we're very complex creatures, but all of it comes down to love and how we treat ourselves, how we treat each other, how we choose to pursue our life by loving ourselves enough to be brave enough to do it. Like all of that is within this album, is just the concept of love. And then of course, this situation now that we live in, we see so much lack of it. Like people, some decision makers, major decision makers in the world don't seem to even think that matters. And the decisions that they make are so short-sighted that let alone the mortals forget that. What about their own children and their own legacies and their own grandchildren? They don't even really think that far, right? I used to think it's so hokey. People say, oh, love everything. But now I understand it. Like at the core of it, if you don't care enough, you will not make the right decisions. You will not stop yourself from behaving badly. We have a tendency as humans to, not be necessarily kind to each other and all of that. So at the core of it is love. And I think a lot of times when we live in tyranny, especially, or in places when we feel less control, what they try to do is make people enemies of each other. They destroy love between each other. They create mistrust. They create disharmony. So then you sort of close in, on yourself, and then you go into survival mode. So love becomes secondary. You just want to survive. it's the elevated state that allows you to think, okay, well, I need to make the right decisions. I need to make sure that I'm kinder to the person that I'm going to see every day or not see at all, or all of those things, right? That's an elevated state that doesn't happen unless your shelter is secure, your water is secure, your children are safe. You know what I mean? So many layers to this concept of love that I never understood until I am blissfully older. It's just nothing to me. I used to be frightened of it, but I'm like, I don't know who's watching out for me, but thank you for the wisdom. I would only be so lucky to hone even more when I'm older. And now I understand that's why the album is about love, unapologetically, because it is an act of resistance. As I said, in tyranny, they attack that. They destroy what keeps people together, strong as one united. Because when you hate your neighbor, when you're frightened of your neighbor, then you're more easy to manipulate and break, right?
The next tune is Longings, and this is inspired by Sevillanas, traditional folkloric songs from Sevilla, Spain, which mark the arrival of spring, and they're often danced to by couples wearing brightly colored flamenco clothes. The lyrics of this song are from poet Farrokhzad.
So in Iran, I was there, I was almost 18, I was 17 or so when we left. And I never considered myself a musician, even though I was playing music, piano for years since I was 3 or 4. And I always tried to sing. That was never open to us. In my family, within the home, we had music going literally almost 24 hours a day if my dad could get away with it. And, so it was, we were very exposed. And every private party, he had an accordion and he would let's sing something. So it was a lot of folk music singing and so on. But it was never something that was even possible to really bring out outside of the home, because instinctively we knew that would be immediately frowned upon. And it was advertised that it is not okay, even for men, especially for women. And it came to the point that I was so eager to do it. We would drum on our chair and our desks at the school, and as soon as the teachers will hear it, they will come to the class and who was playing that? Who was doing that? Who was singing? And we're like, nobody. And everybody was like, it was just the simplest act, right? Simplest act of singing, and it was just so laced with so much denial and rule breaking. And it came to the point of, I said, can I just sing Call to Prayer? It was like, I was not a believer. My parents were not Muslim people. And it was just almost blasphemous to sing that from my point of view, because I did not believe in it. But it sounded so musically beautiful. And it was a chance to let the voice out. And I did it for one time only. And the next day, the neighbors called to ask who was it that sang the thing. And the school was like, oh, we can't have that. No. So that was stopped within a day. So all of this frustration, it was manifested in the voice, but also many other things, like all the day-to-day, the hearing of the no, the constant, anything, any decision, any movement, any kind of thing was constantly resisting. So it was a point that I had to, my parents had to really make a decision. And I was, again, as I always say this often, something somewhere was looking out for me, and it gave them the idea that we got to get her out. Because I think had I stayed there, I would have been either probably rocking in a corner of my room somewhere at 50, or married very unhappily, or in prison or dead. I would not have had any future of any kind. The first 20 years after the revolution was very difficult. And in Pandora, I stepped into Canadian society. I went to high school. We were there at the beginning of summer. September, I was in school. Then you know what happened the very first week? Somebody gave me a key to use a piano for free all day, every day if I wanted. And I just lost my mind. I was like, I can? And they're like, of course. And I'm like, you don't care what I play? Of course not. And I was playing classical music. It wasn't anything. But they're like, here's a key. They didn't know me from anybody. I was just a kid coming out. I spoke very bad English. I dressed funny. It was all, and they just immediately all like, oh, you need a piano. I couldn't afford one to get in the house. And I was interested in, I was like briefly, timidly said, I'm interested in maybe drawing. And they're like, sure, we have supplies for someone who would like them. Would you like it? And it was like a supply cabinet or a camera for free and I was just, all of a sudden, all of these no's with completely turned around 180 degrees to all yeses. And I just kind of like, I was speechless and I didn't have to tell them what I was going to draw. Didn't have to seek permission to what kind of art I wanted to create. And I wasn't even in the arts. I was doing mathematics and science major, assuming that I'll go into architecture. But art sort of just became this freedom moment of like, I can do whatever I want. They're like, yeah, no one really cares. In some point, like, they were fascinated that someone would be so eager to create something, because the average Canadian child, they just sort of took it for granted. But I was so hungry. And then the sky was the limit. I joined choirs. I played instruments. I took flamenco classes. I took, opera classes. I painted. I created a portfolio. I did photography. I made huge sculptures out of clay. I was just like, in this, like, I had like FOMO to the nth degree in the first 10 years of my life in Canada. I could not stop. Then I moved from Toronto to Vancouver, and my dear boyfriend then, he was Iranian. We met in Iran, and he was there, and then we got married and lived in Vancouver and had my children. And this constant understanding that this is a privilege. And even though I've now lived there for, I guess, well, not recently, but overall I've been away for 32 years, that feeling has never left me, ever. The feeling that this could have been easily not been available. So that hunger has never left. And then to sort of move again, to go to Spain, to seek this other thing that seems so inaccessible, this underground world of flamenco in the south of Spain that seems exclusive, and to be able to go and then have the freedom to sort of express it in my language, something that I'm claiming as my own, the corner of it. I mean, honestly, God. What more do I want from life, other than obviously health for my family and my children? This is a blessed life. I mean, how can I ever be ungrateful about the way things have folded, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but that is where the journey has been incredible. And a big part of it is Canada, truly, because I came to it so defeated. I came to it so closed and so broken in some ways of thinking, well, this is life, because it was a major part of my childhood, hearing no, and I guess it's just how life will be. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, there is more. What do you want? And I said, well, I want that. I'm like, okay, well, I take this too. Well, can I have that? Yeah, and then have this. It was just endless. And then I just flourished. And my parents are like, somebody was like telling us the right thing to do, and they're very happy with their decision at the expense of their own lives. Obviously, immigration is always hard on the first generation. So yeah, that was the journey.
We've been speaking with singer, songwriter, and performance artist Farnaz Ohadi. Her new album, Breath, will be out next year, and you can find her music at farnazohadi.com and on streaming platforms. been listening to Healing Wisdom at Outermost Radio. All of our shows are podcasts at WOMR.org. Also check out healingwisdomradioshow.com and contact me at pandora@WOMR.org. Music is provided by Mazen. You can find her website at mazenmusic.com